what I will just quickly do, because there was a lot of questions before, is just hand over to the panel to introduce themselves, and then we can get the questions flowing. Philip, as you know, he's done the introduction. So, Bridget, just a quick intro.
Hi, I'm Bridget Wardlaw. I've been around the itSMF for about 13 years, something like that. My skill set includes business process management. Of course, ITIL sits in there very nicely as a framework, and also getting into the governance areas, COVID and IT. And of late, I've had a particular interest in service catalogues and also risk management and continual improvement programs. And I think it's very strong between incident risk and improvement. And there should be a sort of a very integrated set of processes to manage those things. And from that point of view, I think that the whole BYOD question is very interesting, because one of the major things that you're doing when you're introducing BYOD is managing the risks. So that'll do it for me, I think.
Hi everyone, my name is Busch. As you heard earlier, I'm on the national board of the itSMF. I do need to put in a very brief disclaimer here that I'm not representing my employer. And some members from my company are here, and I think they're actually the true experts. We might throw some questions back to them. They were a little bit vocal earlier, so we might spin some back their way. I guess also by way of introduction, I'm looking around the room and I'm seeing a whole bunch of actual experts here as well, so I'm hoping to actually help you guys and facilitate some of the conversation. My personal background in this space, I've been involved with my employer and others on social media, mobile and mobility projects, and I guess where I'm sitting at the moment is in terms of governance, risk and compliance, and I'm currently working on a number of, shall we say, customer-facing mobile applications, so looking at security and risk and compliance and data governance and things like that. So I guess I'm coming to it from that point of view, and I'm willing to share sort of my industry experience and my broader experience, though I do have to say I can't say anything specifically on behalf of my employer.
Okay, great, thanks for that. Okay, we did have a few questions come through via email, and if you can't hear me okay, let me know, I'll pick up the mic as well. Yeah. All right, so to get things going, I'll get the first question out. So, how did the University of Sydney decide on what was in and what was out in relation to their BYOD policy, and who is the policy directed at?
Okay. I think you saw from our very short policy that it's not really a policy, but it's directed at both students and staff. The students are the real drivers of BYOD. In terms of which devices, if the device can log on to our network, that's okay. That's all right. So that means Android, iPhone, laptops, not a problem.
Can I have a go at the policy?
Yeah.
Something when I was working on the itSMF's social media policy, I kind of came to an epiphany about policies. Typically you read a policy and it starts out with 2 or 3 pages of header and stuff and who you think it applies to, and it's very, very hard to read and understand. So what I've come to understand about policies is that they need to be able to be read by humans, so by the target audience, usually humans. They need to be able to be understood, and then they also need to be able to be put into practice. So if you're finding yourself writing a 15-page policy, you're probably a fairly long way from best practice. And if your policy is in legalese, particularly for these policies that are actually aimed at people and asking them to perform specific behaviours or behave in a certain way, you probably want to be thinking about how you're going to couch that so that people are catching the fire and really understanding what that policy means and how to implement it in practice. So for me, good policy tick list or checklist is read, understood, and put into practice. So if your policies are being put into practice, you've probably got the first 2.
I think to add to that too, if you're writing a 15-page policy, then you've probably actually gotten into procedures or work instructions somewhere along the line, and maybe you should just pull back a bit and think what the essence of the thing is all about, and then you've got to be able to build the rules in the policies into your procedures. And I mean, if it's a really simple one, like if you can log onto the system or go right ahead, then I think that that's a really good way to do it. And working by exception, as you spoke before.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, by far the easiest thing to do.
It's also practical. Have you ever tried to tell a student what to do?
Where to go sometimes. What to do.
Oh, we tell them that occasionally.
And I guess sometimes they're a whole lot smarter than the people who put
Absolutely.
the system together.
We
Yeah.
learn a lot.
And we expect them to be. Yeah. As I frequently say to members of the younger generation, my generation invented this stuff. You just know how to work it.
Some follow-up questions? Andy?
As coming at it from an end user perspective, or change that a little bit, if I'm bringing my own device into a company, what is to stop? I guess the fear that I have as an end user is that company going to tell me what operating system I'm allowed to have on my own laptop, what applications I'm allowed to have on my own laptop in order to bring it into the company, and how I'm allowed to use it. If all I'm doing is coming in and just using your internet, that's fine, you can do that anywhere. But what's to stop you doing that? Yes, you told me I need to bring my own device, but do you then have the right to control what goes on it?
You want me to, from the point of view of the university, the extra things you have on your machine is your business. The things that we want on the machine is to do your job. And so we're saying, do your job, here's the tools.
What about as a student?
As a student, same thing. They've got to, if they're going to use that device to do their study, we've actually prepared an app which runs on Android and iPhone, which has got on it their curriculum, their access to the online services that we provide at the university, Blackboard. So we've tried to do our best to say, here are the tools to do your job. Make sure that you've got them loaded.
I think probably there's there's an evolution that's happened, particularly with BPM tools. Is everybody familiar with BPM tools? Let's just call them process automation tools. What I'm finding is that a few years ago, what I was being asked to do was configure processes into the tool that would then be operated from an organisation's computer. So you would get in and you raise a ticket and you do stuff on the ticket to pass the ticket on and so on. What I've been doing more recently is once again using ITIL type processes, so particularly around incidents and service requests. What we're building now is apps, and so if you want to raise an incident, you bring up the app incident and you can do it on the run. And there are these wonderful benefits from it in that it's much quicker and easier, and nobody's got to run back to an office or a workstation to actually enter details in. They can do it from their smartphone. Now, in some organisations, it's the organisation's smartphone, but they are working, even in quite high security areas, they're working towards having the app being usable on a BYOD. And the joy of it is, from my point of view, is that suddenly from it being a really onerous task to be registering, for instance, incidents, so you're only going to get the ones that people can really be bothered to log, and there'll be a whole lot where they just sort of go, oh, I didn't see that. Whereas now they can just go, and it's almost a computer game, and they're up there, oh, wacko, I can take a picture, I can attach the thing on my phone, bang, 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 bing, and off you go. You don't even have to stop walking. You're going from point A to point B, and suddenly you're getting a whole lot more management information coming in. And it's not just confined to staff of the particular organisation. The users, so I'm talking a big transport hub, and there's all sorts of people coming in, and instead of having to sort of go, I mean, I as a visitor to airports and train stations and so on, if I see something I'm the sort of person who wants to report it. Now, if I can actually look up and see something reported here, download this app and bang, 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 and suddenly I can do it on my phone, well, for now I'll feel quite smart about that. Maybe in about 5 years' time, so last decade or whatever, you know, I can't be bothered anymore. But for now, it's kind of fun to be able to be part of the whole reporting process and being able to do stuff. So no operating systems required. It's just all apps.
So I wanted to pick up on two quick things there. One was a very non-IT word, or maybe a word that's used about IT a lot, beer. And it's something that I see a lot in this conversation, whether it be about mobile or cloud or anything new. There's a lot of human emotions in this, and I think it's really important to work with the people who are going to be bringing their own devices, and never to sort of come at this necessarily from a policy or technology problem, but also to work with the people themselves, because there's a big organisational change process that needs to go on here. So something that goes on the back of that is the word trust, and it's a trust conversation that's between the employer and the employee. And part of that is actually being clear about what is this for? Why are you bringing this device? What rights and expectations should you have? Let's be clear, it's work hours. So there are some things I shouldn't be doing during work hours anyway, surfing the internet for certain sites and things like that. So should I have an expectation that even though it's my device, there should be no controls on it? Because there are things that I can bring up on that device that wouldn't be appropriate in the workplace. So maybe some level of control is now appropriate, and I need to have that permission conversation between my employer and myself about what that's going to look like, or maybe between a group of employees and the employer. The other thing on the back of what Bridget was saying is it's a change in mindset in terms of information security. You know, we've gone from trying to defend the castle walls and building thicker castle walls and putting greater defences on the rampart to now where employees are actually bringing their own device. And so as an employer, you have very little trust in this device that's coming into the network. You can't rely on it. It's not standard. May not have your normal protections on it. So in that case, it gives you a very different model about what you're going to do with the organisation's information and how far you're going to let that go onto the device. So it's interesting to hear about things like virtual desktops, a great way of keeping information within the organisation and only presenting it on screen. Still, it can leak out, people's got printers and cameras, but the core of the information stays within the organisation. It's other strategies as well, like encryption. It's like, what do you leave on the device when you write up the app? You know, how much information is left behind? So it's actually having this really clear thought about why are we allowing BYOD, what are we expecting people to do with it, and then also addressing that conversation between the employer and the employee about what it is you want to do.
Have you heard of some organisations actually doing this, or?
There's been a couple that I have, and I guess from a user perspective, I guess, looking at what you said about the service desk is not BYOD. If your employer is saying that's the model we're moving to and you have to bring your own device, to my mind that means, okay, well if I have a problem then, you're going to fix it.
Quite right.
Even if it's my device, I'm still going to fix it because you insisted that I bring my own device.
There's actually an interesting alternative version of that, which is there are some employees who cannot, under any circumstance, bring their own device because of regulatory requirements. So the job that they actually do doesn't permit them to actually have a non-monitored channel of communication. So there are some regulations that say you actually have to monitor every word that's said, for instance, in the provision of financial advice in other areas. So you actually do have to check your own device as you enter the trading floor. So there are some areas where BYOD is just not even possible or an option. So it's actually having a really good think about, is it possible? Why would I do it? Where does it work?
A few questions actually.
Yeah, so carrying on from this, from this lady's last point. So the IT service desk typically is the last person that finds out about new technology, new process, new service delivery. So given that most businesses, most CIOs are saying, yeah, we're going down BYOD. It's all about staff satisfaction, differentiation, whole lot of goodness. So the IT service desk is dealing with the collateral damage. So what do you think the service desk needs to be able to deal with this situation and be able to step up and support with what the business wants to achieve?
Be a great knowledge base first, wouldn't it?
Well, which we have, by the way. But to answer your question in the university context, we can't put a system into production without sign-off from the manager of the help desk area. It's a big function in that. And so there is no way the help desk can get left out of changes. And in fact, the people on the help desk, not only have they got that electronic knowledge base, they've also got a hell of a lot of experience about whether this will really work with those customers out there. And so we view them as a resource to help get it right, not as the last people find out.
So perhaps even unique.
I don't know, it's just what we've worked with, so really I'm just describing what we've got. I thought it would be the same everywhere else.
Yeah. Sorry. In my organisation, we're constantly challenged about bringing our own devices and the services itself. So, around security and access to services, or access to update tickets and stuff like that. So, how does the university address that, or does it don't allow it, or is it just your BYOD is outside of it?
I'm not quite sure I understand the question.
No,
so
people bring BYOD, so
yeah.
if you get a chance to say, well, I've got a laptop or an iPad or something, I want to access the itSMF system to update. I want to go to work. Does the university do allow that part of that, or is it something that...
I can go into our help desk system right now and create a ticket on my iPad. Right now. The only restrictions that we've got there is that there are a limited number of people who have the ability to go in and make changes directly in the help desk system. We've got the ability, if you go into our staff intranet, then you've got the ability to go and create through our self-service portal. But that's talking very specifically about our ticketing system.
Broader panel account this sort of issues with this?
Sorry,
the broader panel, they account for issues in this area? Because my company has security policies that basically don't allow them to do that. It's part of the issue. We have to do it by security.
I'm not saying every employee in the university can do that, by the way. I'm just saying that.
So I'll have a go at part of the answer, which is it's not an answer for today. I think it's changing, which is the places where these apps are actually hosted is changing. So as the companies start to push applications out to the cloud, and I mean more as the software as a service style applications, so applications that run wholly in the cloud, it starts to become a whole lot less important from where and by what you're accessing them, because the protection has to be within the application itself. So if you've got your ERM system, if you've got your CRM system, your customer support systems, in cloud-hosted environments actually living on the cloud, then if you're connecting to it over my 4G iPad, or if you're connecting to it over the company's wide network, they're both just channels to get to the same thing in the same interface, and it's the credentials that you're presenting, and it's how you're protecting the data. So I think as more applications move to the cloud, the question actually starts to change around quite significantly. I also just want to quickly go back to the other question around is the IT service desk ready for BYOD, and throw out the challenge of, is it the service desk who you want to be providing support? Telstra uses a crowdsourced model for support now for a lot of their services, and I think in the cases where you actually have people who are driving to bring their own devices, and actually the younger generation who want to bring their own devices because they see some advantage in it, they're actually quite able to do their own style of support and to support themselves as a crowd. So I wanted to throw out a challenge, I guess, to the thinking of, does the service desk have to support every device that connects to the network, or is it even possible to say, let the community support all of those devices, because the community is generally wiser than any person or any knowledge base?
I've actually got a device that's being supported in that way. It's this Fitbit, and it's basically a kind of fancy pedometer. It doesn't really do as much as you think it would do, but there is a whole community using these things, and when you start asking questions when you get online, it's only crowd sport. And in fact, the Fitbit people sort of stay very hands-off. They're watching it, and they're picking information out of it, and they're making improvements and updates to it, but they don't get involved in the conversation. It's really quite fascinating. And there are people who sort of wildly defend the device and its capabilities, and others who are bagging it. And there are some people who sort of get on and just say, no, really, there's something wrong. Yours, take it back. It shouldn't be working like that. So very interesting the way that's evolving. I think that's a whole new state of play with those kinds of things. I'm a bit fascinated by it. Might be a bit behind the times, but.
I was going to answer that Bradley's comment around. I think a future state service desk is only going to be supporting core business apps, this device stuff. And I think BYD is, I'm almost past the point of talking about it. It's actually been happening for about 3 or 4 years now. Any company that says they're not doing BYD they are. They just don't know it's happening. But it is happening. Whether it's through active sync or mobile phones, it's already been gone. Well, not gone, it's a bit slow. We're as an organisation, we're just moving to a big Citrix platform, which is our point. We're going to put the corporate world in the bubble and go for your life. Whatever device you want to use to connect to this, as long as it runs Citrix receiver, you can have your corporate line inside the bubble on your laptop, on whatever device you want to be iPad. We're starting to talk about bring your own application is the next thing, and that's that. The service desk looking after those corporate apps and security going right back into the middle and just looking after the systems of record and allowing users to use whatever app they want to access those systems of record, which is, Gartner talk a lot about it, but it's something we're starting to build some SOA layers around and things like that to do. But I know it's different for different organisations, and you say we also have regulatory requirements, we can't do that everywhere. But for our knowledge worker, that's what I think is going to happen next. And I think that these traditional service desks helping people fix laptops and things like that is in a couple of years' time we won't be talking about anymore. It will just drop.
Yeah. It becomes the responsibility of the vendor, doesn't it? I mean, if I've got a Samsung Galaxy and I can't make it work, I'll call Samsung. So.
Well, I think some of my team think I'm a bit crazy about it sometimes, but I think Apple do this way better than I can do it. And I'd say, well, if we buy an Apple device, we buy all the kits through Telstra, which is through a third party. If we send it back to them, it's a 2-3 day turnaround for them to send it off. And I go, if you're near an Apple store, just drop in. They'll do it there and then. They'll either give you a new one or they'll help you fix the problem and send you on your way. It's awesome. I can't afford my budget to provide that level of support, so I'll let Apple do it.
Yeah. I think there's a big cultural change there. For instance, chefs bring their own knives, and a chef who turns up without their own knives isn't working that really a chef. So if you're a knowledge worker, do we move as a society to the point where a knowledge worker brings their own toys and they have their tools and they have their choice of the tools that they bring, and we move much more to that tradesman model. But then the question is, who bears the cost of the downtime? Do you not pay me if my iPad's broken?
What's the downtime? Okay, only if it's broken. Yeah.
Is it really the toys that you need to do your job?
Yeah.
So, for instance, I've got a guy at work. He has 4 monitors, 2 phones, and an iPad. He's an engineer. And you look at it and you go, what are you doing? Well, the iPad's for his emails, for his home device. 2 phones, and one's personal, one's work. One's a secure network, and the other one's for actually doing his job. So, like, seriously. And he only works 6.5 hours a day.
So
I watch it constantly. I'm just amazed. And, he comes in at this time and he goes at this time. I mean, he gets his job done. It's very efficient. But does he really need all of them? And he's the one pushing BYOD.
And I think that's one of the reasons why we should be welcoming it and embracing it, is because a person who walks in with their own devices, they're already totally upskilled at working with them, and the productivity, they'll just hit the ground running. All they've got to do is learn about your business. I mean, when I start a job, I started the last one 4 years ago, the first thing you've got to do is get your head around the new laptop you've just been given and the new smartphone that you've just been given, and the the first week is spent learning how to use the tools. Well, that's just out the window. They just sort of go, yeah, I know how to do that. But where do I get the apps from? Right now, I'll learn how to use the apps and the various systems, the software that you want me to download. And I loved your thoughts about being able to just plug in and download whatever software you needed. I thought that was fantastic.
Georgetown Uni doing that.
Yeah, but then, for instance, a younger person that I was talking to is very adept with a Samsung thing that's about that big. I'm not even sure what it is. Bigger than a phone and smaller than a tablet. And he can do all this. What is a tablet? Right.
Phablet.
A phablet.
Yes. I think that's the technical term.
It could well be. And he can draw diagrams. He was just so adept at being able to turn out quite a professional diagram. And I said, that's just done away with the need to write on a serviette at the dinner table. Because he can do it. He can actually create, while he's sitting there, he can say, so you mean like this and like that, and suddenly he's created this really professional diagram which he can instantly email to you to use tomorrow or whatever, send through to his boss for the presentation he's about to do in an hour's time or whatever. And I was just blown away. And I thought, well, if you take that away from him and say he can't use it, well, there's a whole piece of his productivity gone. He's got to go back to the whiteboard.
It's a very good example. Do we actually say to people, take notes at a meeting and do it this way? I've sat next to people who use handwriting recognition on a tablet. Do it brilliantly. I can't do it. I can key, or I can write. But nobody cares how the notes are captured as long as they're captured.
Don't feel bad, Philip. Our generation invented it, okay?
You invented writing.
Be able to use
You invented writing.
No, technology will do that stuff.
Okay, Carlos has been waiting for a bit.
So, one of the things I'd like to ask, I understand that firstly you can get two different layers. You can get the DMZ sort of, so where you allow general access, and that to me makes sense where you can say, let's really bring whatever you have, log on and use, because that's limited access and you sort of allowing them a play area, if you will. And then you get that above DMZ where you might have your ERP systems or something, and then you've got that extra level of restriction. So if still in a organization, this comes to the earlier point of being productive, sharing information, collaboration, etc. You need to have certain ways of working, if you will. So let's say in a organization, I'm saying we're going to share information. It will always be in Word, it will be Adobe or PDF or something, and we need people to share that. And this leads me to what I'm trying to understand. We just recently, through our software asset management, had audits, Microsoft and Adobe and stuff come in. They see the organization, they think they want to make sure that we're playing by the rules. Now, when they put these sniffers in, whatever they are, and they go out and find all sorts of stuff, and then come to us and say, this is what you've got and what you're using. Part of the issue we have is we already have BYOD, as you see, that's happening out there. We've got business people that have their own devices which might have been bought by themselves, and it's sort of similar to what we're using. But all of a sudden, they've got Microsoft Word on, they've got whatever else which we haven't bought, different license, and all of a sudden we're saying you're X amount under, and we're suddenly in a legal issue. We find we have to true up and pay fines and all sorts of things. How is that being addressed through the BYOD?
At the university, if we took the specific example of an office product, if the student is enrolled in a unit of study, they can use Microsoft Office. And so it's very difficult to have an illegal version of it on there. Do we look at it? No, we don't. We don't decide that the student can only use a Microsoft Office supplied by us, because they can use OpenOffice, they can use Office 365. If they've got an iPad, they've got about 15 different versions of Editor that they can use there. So it's just too hard for us to do that. Microsoft understand that. They're not going to say to us, that student's got an illegal copy of Office, you're liable. That's different to a corporation that you were talking about.
You're in kind of a pretty unique situation. They are in a DMZ, and Microsoft and Apple both actively want to encourage users in their early days to use their products so that they'll carry them into open life.
From a corporate perspective, sorry, just tell me on your question, from a corporate perspective, Microsoft have introduced with their EAs arrangements that you can subscribe to 365 licensing models even if you're not using the 365 product, which turns the whole Microsoft licensing model to user-based, not device-based. That's how we're getting around that. So if you're on an EA or an SA with Microsoft, you can talk to your account manager and they can maybe shift your licensing out.
Because the home use agreement comes into play there as well. And then one of the other things is most vendors are now pushing towards subscription licensing. So you're actually starting to see, Adobe and others pushing towards 1 year licenses. So it becomes less of a problem if someone's leaving because they just simply won't have access in a year's time. It will all get screwed up because they won't be a subscriber anymore unless they pay for it themselves. So there's a couple of things changing there.
I think it's an interesting point. So who's responsible for what on the desktop? You bring your own laptop in, who's responsible for content on the laptop? There's no easy answer.
No, and a little while ago I did a whole course on software license management, and it's not that simple. And in fact, the only advice anyone could give you about software license management is go and read the license agreement, and you'll be asleep very shortly after you start. But and they're complex, and I think they're necessarily complex, but they also, that complexity actually makes it hard for people to comply, but it's the software vendor's advantage. Sorry, I said that out loud. But it is hard to comply because they can come and audit you, and so yeah, it is actually up to the organisation to work out with their vendors and with their employees who is actually responsible. Because in a lot of these cases, for instance, with Microsoft, you can buy what do they call them? The license for, say, Office with the laptop, and then you can't transfer it to another laptop, and then it's all licensed. And maybe that's part of the BYOD policy that actually says if you come and connect it, then you are responsible for bringing the following tools along with it, including a 3-year maintenance warranty. And
well, it's the same as a contractor. They come in, they've got to have their licenses, insurances up to date. They've got to be able to provide their white cards, their hot servicing cards, whatever it is. Maybe that's what part of BYOD is. You've got to prove that you've actually got the license and paid for it. So there is no liability in the organisation.
So I think one takeaway there is no answer. It's that you have to work out the answer.
So there's nothing more frustrating than bringing in a contractor or something and says, right, so I need you to manage this project for me. The guy turns up and says, oh, can I have a laptop? Can I have a copy of Microsoft Project? Can I have this and can I have that? Unfortunately, 3 weeks to get a job done, don't you have your own tools?
One of the things that occurred to me when I was thinking about this discussion is that the focus of the IT department, I think, has to shift somewhat from previous focuses to other things that we need to focus on now. And I think one of them would be software management, software license management. I mean, I think a lot of people are starting to focus on that, thinking, okay, we can't be quite as organic as we used to be. We need to get quite serious about recording who it's been issued to and when it's been taken off their machine, putting it back into the reuse pool, and actually keeping track of all the licenses and understanding who's got what, where, and why, and whether or not they should be, and all of that sort of stuff. Tedious processes, but very necessary, and that could be one of the new focuses that are required. I mean, quite obviously, security is another process that we need to focus on with these things, and actually think about, what is the checklist, what is the onboarding process if people are bringing their own devices, and what other things do we have to think about that we didn't do previously. There was one more that I had and it slipped my mind, but yeah, maybe developing some processes for people arriving with different kind of gadgets. Maybe there's something that you need to do. Maybe you need to scan them for viruses. Different things that we need to focus on. So the whole onboarding process of a new person coming in, or even a new device coming in with a person who's already been there, have some processes set up. And this is, in order to use it, you've got to bring it and put it through this checklist or whatever. And be very careful that's been done, and keep records, auditable records that's been done, so that if, from the risk management point of view, something goes wrong, we can actually say, well, we did actually check that, and we have actually, put it through this and read them the right act and told them what the policy is, and so on. So new processes to think about.
Just latching onto that is then also, sorry, Dave, just to hijack quickly, is also the who owns that data. So typically now, if you leave, you have to leave your laptop at the office because your data is corporate data. But now suddenly, if it's my Apple and I'm leaving, and they say we want to take your data off. Hang on, I've got work data, but I've also got the family photographs, and I can be on site. I visited.
We have that now, though.
Yeah. But they don't look at my USB drive that I put in my work machine and copy down all the stuff I wanted and then left.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I mean, I put photos on my work computer, my professional photos, they're all on there.
Oh, you'd be dead. You'd be gone.
Well, I think to this point that before that, if they're that sensitive about the information, then it must be in that bubble, or else you can always bring it across.
Yeah.
I have to get to the second question that we got from email.
I just have another question.
I do. Is BYOD more cost effective, and also what's the most unexpected benefit of BYOD?
I think I can answer the first question very quickly. It must be more cost effective because a firm that I know quite well recently just decided to go to BYOD and they wouldn't have it if it wasn't more cost effective. Why else would they have? It wasn't because they wanted us to have more fun at work, I know that.
I find it a funny question. I'm an employee of an organisation, and they say to me, bring along my own device. I'm going to say to them, why should I do that? Give me some money to make up for the fact that I'm actually capitalising your business. So I don't quite understand where the cost saving arrives in a genuine, equitable BYOD arrangement.
You're assuming, though, that they're going to compensate you for having to bring your own device.
Absolutely.
And this is where you rely on the value part of the conversation. You say to that person, okay, I'm actually not going to compensate you. And if the value to you is having an iPad Air or a Samsung whatever, and that's what you want to do and you want to work with your tools, then you're obviously seeing value in that, and it's not cheap. I'm not going to make it cheap for you.
That's why it costs you $95 an hour. It comes with his tools.
No.
I did a BYD for a pen.
But the people who are really advocating for BYOD and who really want it and are really pushing for it, they don't care if they've already bought all the devices and they love using them and they want to use them, and so your point about being compensated doesn't even cross their mind.
Yeah, and that's one of the interesting things. I've got a good friend who presents in HR quite a bit. She's presented at the Leader Conference a few times. She talks about currencies of choice in rewarding your employees. So actually rewarding them by giving them flexibility is actually a currency of choice for some people, and particularly for knowledge workers. She talks about some studies that have been done that where knowledge workers sort of get to a certain level of compensation and you can't increase their job satisfaction by paying them more. But you can increase their job satisfaction by giving them more flexibility with leave or by giving them more choice in how they go about work or when they work. So in this case, between the organisation and the employee, it could be a currency of choice, which is I'm going to invest in our infrastructure to support it. We're going to have to change a lot of our core systems in order to support it, so there's a lot of cost to us to get there. But we're investing in you and giving you a currency of choice, which is flexibility in terms of working with the devices and the tools that you want to work with.
And being able to have Spotify and Facebook at your fingertips.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very important.
Not having two phones in my pocket.
Yeah.
On the other side of that compensation model, what do you do with the person who says they turn up to their new job and they've got an old 486 laptop that they come with thoroughly understand the stuff, but I bought my own here, like how do you make them upgrade?
But if they do the job, what does it matter?
It's a 486.
Write down the stuff.
So my next question to ask is, what sort of BYOD?
Yeah, sure. Organisations should have a bit of incentives in place as well. I mean, like in your case, you get a very good rate. Yeah, pretty good policy.
Okay, just a further question: is anyone who's doing BYOD taking advantage of salary sacrifice?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, we have yours.
End of BT financial year. 10 days time.
We don't have to, but can be available in NZ, also like New Zealand and Wardlaw, so it's not difficult to everyone.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting thing. The cost of the device is quite disproportionate with the salaries in different jurisdictions, and then tax is not taxed. Like taxes depends on the jurisdiction and pay rates and a whole bunch of things. So for some people it might be cost effective, for others not.
Just bringing a few of the things that have been spoken about together. Actually, my primary concern at the moment is that it's break your own device. And what I mean by that, and
you want to help us?
Well, no, but listening to the help desk support model and the belief as to where that's going, and also taking a lot of BYOD examples, I think people who self-support themselves at home are doing it at a very low cost base. So a lawyer who's looking up how to use XYZ function on their new Whiz-Bang Gizmo at home costs nothing. At work costs $1,200 an hour. And I know that when that device breaks, I can replace that. Unlike the example provided earlier, I can replace that device, BlackBerry, and everything from my space pool in minutes. They can just swing past the desk, get the new stuff, be online, and go to the next meeting. Has anyone, and it may be on the panel and maybe whatever out in the audience, tried to quantify the cost of the breakage versus the savings of the device in terms of hours of productivity lost?
I think there was more of this kind of calculation done, but I know there was discussion about having a pool of laptops on standby so that, for instance, if somebody was off a remote site and their own device failed, that the call would be, quick, send me one, and it'd be couriered out to, so while they were organising to get their own device fixed, that they would courier out a pool machine to use, which may not be all that effective.
Yeah, we have exactly that. Any one of our more senior, in fact, any one of our more senior people at any time of day or night, if they just forget to bring their laptop in, can go to the service desk, pick up a new one, be imaged, and be online within about half an hour. And then they hand it back at the end of the day, and that's them done. I had an interesting example of a little bit of what you're saying. We have apps on things like BlackBerry and BlackBerry, but any particular phone, but BlackBerry. And this guy, we had some new BlackBerry plans come out, and he couldn't get it to work. He was a reasonably senior guy. He came down to the service desk and said, "I've had it with these BlackBerries. I want an iOS device." And we had it bought from our, but we basically went out and bought one, and it's set up for us in an hour, and he was then mobile with it. So that's the level of service that some people get. But I've had it with this BlackBerry, this isn't working, your plan doesn't work for me. Throw it on the floor, I want a new one right now. And an hour later, we've got one.
So has anyone ever seen a Top Gear episode where they have the three guys drive the cars around, they buy a cheap car, and the thing that follows them around behind in case any of their car breaks is a VW? It's kind of that incentive of, whatever you do, don't let your device break because you get a VW.
Yeah, I think we have to take questions during the breaks after this, or the drinks. So maybe, and just have a quick closing remark from each of the panelists.
It's only been during this discussion that I realised that we've actually got BYOD for customers, and that's our students. And there was a question earlier about what have we learned about from BYOD, and I suppose that it's actually been a method for us to listen to our customers, another channel to our customers, because I flashed around an application that was a menu for an iPad, a menu of functions. That would never come about without our students being BYOD. They showed us what we needed to do in an application, and then we added a few things that we've never thought of, that we asked them about, that they'd never used before. In other words, we've got a very, very good application from listening to our customers, the result of BYOD.
My thoughts on this new, this new movement within IT is that we have to rethink our set of processes and what our focuses are, and do some risk analysis and just see where it is that we need to be turning our attention, and come up with a kind of a new suite of processes with a focus on the BYOD risks and services.
So for me, I'm going to put my governance hat on, so before you all go to sleep, it's not that bad. So be clear about what you want to get out of BYOD. Be clear about what you want to do with it. And then think through, COVID has an excellent model for organisational capabilities. So start with understanding the organisational capability is to enable BYOD, and then look at COVID's enabler framework and make sure that you have those boxes ticked. So COVID would talk about, you know, people and processes and governance and organisational structure, standards, tools. So it's actually a very complete framework to help you think through the problem. So, and most of that's available free from the itSMFA website with the high-level downloads of the top-level COVID. So something like COVID can actually help you answer those questions once you've started with that. What is it we want to know, and what do we want to do with these devices? Then you can move into the, well, the how and the what.
Can I just add to that? Because COVID has, and you have to buy this one, but it has a document called COVID for Assurance that actually has an appendix that's a whole BYOD example, so which is quite useful if you're looking at that.
And there's quite a bit out there as well. Sorry, I'll just follow on from that. You know, OWASP, which is a very security thing. So sorry if there are any security people in the room, but OWASP is a security framework. They've just released OWASP for mobile, and they talk through the top 10 risks for mobile and the top 10 vulnerabilities in mobile and mobile applications. They're quite different to web, and that was a real eye-opener to me. So yeah, there is stuff out there to help you and support you, but I think the industry is still relatively immature, and we're still working our way towards frameworks and processes and standardising some of the ways of doing this. So I guess that I'm going to keep saying it, keep your eyes open and be sure about it from the governance point of view. What is the value you want to create for your organisation, and work out how to go and get that there.
Great, thank you very much. There was a lot of good information there. And for our appreciation, there's to little cross. That's a certificate and a little present which you can open up later. Thanks very much.
Well, thank you.
And to Bridget for being on the panel.
Thank you.
Bridget. And, I'm not sure we can.
They're all the same.
It is. Thanks very much for being on the panel. And
Thank you.